Hello, FreeJord. I really appreciate you watching and commenting. Now, let's listen to the story.
I threw away my son's late wife's belongings because he needed to move on. Now he's cut me out of his life completely. I don't understand why my son won't speak to me anymore. It's been 14 months since he changed his locks, blocked my number, and told the rest of the family that I'm not welcome at any gatherings he attends. 14 months of being treated like a criminal when all I did was try to help him heal. But let me start from the beginning, because everyone has heard David's version of events, and his version is poisoned by grief and anger and an inability to see what's best for him. 3 years ago, David's wife Lauren died in a car accident. She was 34 years old. They'd been married for 6 years, together for 9. No children, thankfully, that would have made everything so much more complicated. I never particularly liked Lauren. She was fine, I suppose, polite enough, but she was one of those women who thought she was smarter than everyone else. She had a PhD in something useless, art, history or literature, I can't remember which. She worked at a museum making barely any money, and David had to carry most of their financial burden. I told him before they got married that he could do better, but he didn't listen. Still, I never wished her dead. When David called me that night, sobbing so hard I could barely understand him, telling me there'd been an accident, my heart broke for him. Whatever my feelings about Lauren, she was his wife and he loved her. The funeral was difficult. David was barely functional. He gave a eulogy that went on far too long, talking about how Lauren was his soulmate, his best friend, the love of his life. People were crying. It was all very dramatic. After the funeral, David basically shut down. He went back to work after 2 weeks because he had to, but that was it. He came home, sat in their apartment and stared at the walls. He stopped seeing friends. He stopped answering calls. He barely ate. I tried to help. I called him every day. I brought over food. I suggested grief counseling, support groups, activities to get him out of the house. But he just sat there, surrounded by Lauren's things, drowning in memories. Their apartment was like a shrine. Lauren's books were still on the shelves. Her coat was still hanging by the door. Her coffee mug was still in the dish rack. Her side of the closet was untouched. Even her toiletries were still in the bathroom, her shampoo, her makeup, her hairbrush with strands of her hair still in it. It was unhealthy. David, you need to start moving forward, I told him about 3 months after the funeral. I know you're grieving, but you can't live like this forever. I'm not ready, Moms. When will you be ready? It's been 3 months. You have to start processing this and moving on with your life. Moving on, Lauren died. I'm not moving on from that. I don't mean forgetting her. I mean accepting what happened and starting to build a new life. You're 36 years old. You're still young. Eventually you'll want to date again, maybe remarry. Stop, just stop. I don't want to talk about this. But someone had to talk about it. Someone had to pull David out of this pit he was sinking into. And if he wouldn't listen to reason, then I had to take action. I started suggesting small changes. Maybe pack up some of Lauren's clothes, donate them to charity. She'd want them to go to people who need them. I'm not ready. What about her books? You could donate them to the library in her memory. Mom, please, I'll do it when I'm ready. Months passed, 6 months, 8 months. A year. David was still living in that apartment, still surrounded by Lauren's ghost, still refusing to move forward. He'd go to work, come home and sit in the chair that had been Lauren's favourite, staring at nothing. I watched my son waste away and it infuriated me. Lauren was gone. She wasn't coming back, and David was throwing away his life because he couldn't accept that simple fact. His friends were worried too. I talked to his best friend Michael at a family gathering, and he admitted that David had stopped responding to invitations, stopped joining their gaming nights, stopped being part of their lives. He's stuck, Michael said. We don't know how to help him. He needs someone to force him to move forward, I said. He's not going to do it on his own. That's when I decided what I had to do. David had given me a key to his apartment years ago for emergencies. This, I decided, was an emergency. My son was drowning, and someone had to throw him a lifeline even if he didn't want it. I chose a Tuesday. I knew David had a full day of meetings at work. He'd mentioned it over the phone. That would give me plenty of time. I let myself into the apartment with my key. It was worse than I'd thought. Not dirty exactly, David kept it clean, but frozen in time. There were still photos of Lauren everywhere, her reading glasses on the side table. A half-finished crossword puzzle that she'd apparently been working on before she died, still sitting on the coffee table. It was like a museum, a mausoleum. I started in the bedroom. I pulled all of Lauren's clothes out of the closet and folded them into garbage bags. Dresses, sweaters, jeans, shoes, all of it. Her jewellery went into a separate bag. I worked methodically, room by room. The bathroom, Lauren's makeup, skincare products, medications, hairbrush, everything went into bags. The living room, I took down the photos of Lauren. Not all the photos, I left the wedding photo on the mantle because that felt important, but the casual snapshots, the vacation photos, the candids that were everywhere. I packed up her books, her art supplies, the throw pillows she'd bought, the paintings she'd made. The kitchen, her favourite mug, the specialty tea she liked, the cookbooks with her notes in the margins. I found boxes of letters in the bedroom closet. Love letters, it looked like, that David and Lauren had written to each other over the years. Those went into the bags too. By the time I was finished, I had 15 large garbage bags full of Lauren's belongings. I loaded them into my car and drove them to Goodwill. The woman at the donation centre asked if I wanted a receipt for tax purposes. I said no, I didn't need recognition for doing the right thing. When I got back to David's apartment, I did a final walkthrough. It looked so much better. Cleaner, less cluttered, ready for David to start building a new life. I left the key on the kitchen counter with a note. I know this was hard, but it needed to be done. You have to move forward, sweetheart. Lauren would want you to be happy. Call me when you're ready to talk. Love, Mom. Then I went home and waited for David to call. He didn't call her. Instead, he showed up at my house at 9 o'clock that night. I heard his car screech into the driveway, heard him pounding on the door before I could even get up from the couch. When I opened the door, his face was red and wet with tears. What did you do? David, come inside and we can. What did you do? He was screaming now loud enough that neighbors' lights were turning on. Where are Lauren's things? Where is everything? I donated them to Goodwill. You weren't using them and someone else could. You had no right, those weren't your things, that wasn't your decision. You weren't making any decisions, David, someone had to. You threw away my wife's belongings. He was crying harder now, barely able to get the words out. Her clothes, her books, her letters, everything, it's all gone. It was hurting you to keep all of that. You were stuck, grieving in an unhealthy way. I was trying to help you move forward. By throwing away everything I had left of her. You have your memories, you don't need physical objects to remember Lauren. He stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. You're insane, you're actually insane. Don't speak to me that way. I'm your mother, and I did what needed to be done for your own good. For my own good, Mom, some of those things were irreplaceable. The letters we wrote to each other. Her artwork. The sweater she was wearing the day we met that I kept because it smelled like her. Her grandmother's necklace, all of it just thrown away like garbage. I donated it, not threw it away, and those things were keeping you trapped in the past. I needed those things, I wasn't ready to let them go. You were never going to be ready, that's why I had to do it for you. He was shaking with rage. Give me back my key. David, let's talk about this. Give me back my key right now, or I'm calling the police and reporting what you did as theft. I got the key from my purse and handed it to him. He snatched it out of my hand. Don't ever come to my apartment again, he said. Don't call me, don't text me, I don't want to see you or hear from you. You're upset right now, but eventually you'll understand. I will never understand this, never, what you did is unforgivable. He left, I stood in my doorway watching his car disappear down the street and I felt nothing, not guilt, not regret. Just a certainty that I'd done the right thing even if David couldn't see it yet. Over the next few days other people started calling. David's father, my ex-husband, called me screaming about how I'd violated David's privacy and destroyed irreplaceable items. David's sister called in tears, asking how I could do something so cruel. Even Michael called, telling me that David was devastated and that I'd made everything worse. But they didn't understand. They hadn't watched David waste away for over a year, refusing to move forward, refusing to live. They didn't see what I saw, a son who needed to be saved from himself. I tried calling David a few days later once I thought he'd had time to calm down. His number was blocked. I tried texting from a different number. No response. I drove to his apartment, but he wouldn't answer the door even though I could hear him inside. David, please, I called through the door. I know you're angry, but we need to talk about this. I was trying to help you. Go away, he shouted from inside. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. I left, but I wasn't ready to give up. I started showing up at places I knew he'd be. The grocery store near his apartment. His favorite coffee shop. I'd try to approach him, try to talk, but he'd turn and walk away the moment he saw me. Once I cornered him in the parking lot after his therapy session. Yes, he'd finally started going to therapy, which I took as a sign that my intervention had worked, that I'd forced him to start healing. David, please just listen to me for 1 minute. You went through my home, he said, his voice flat and cold in a way I'd never heard before. You threw away my wife's belongings without my permission. You violated my privacy and my trust in the worst possible way. There is nothing you can say that will make this okay. I was trying to help you move on. You had no right, those things weren't yours, that grief wasn't yours, my healing process wasn't yours to control. I'm your mother, I have every right to help my child when he's suffering. You're not helping, you've never helped. You've only ever tried to control everything and everyone around you, and you can't even see it. That's not true. Stay away from me, I mean it. If you show up at my apartment again, if you follow me again, I will get a restraining order. A restraining order, against his own mother. But I backed off because I didn't want it to come to that. I thought maybe if I gave him space, he'd eventually calm down and realize I'd been right. Weeks passed, then months. I heard through David's sister that he'd gone back to Goodwill, desperately hoping to find some of Lauren's things, but of course they were long gone. Sold or donated elsewhere. He'd driven to every Goodwill in a 50-mile radius, she said, searching for anything that might have been Lauren's. He didn't find anything. His sister told me this like it was supposed to make me feel bad, but it just reinforced what I already knew. David was too attached to material objects. He was using things as a crutch instead of actually processing his grief. 6 months after our confrontation, I heard that David had started dating someone. Her name was Rachel. She was a teacher. I tried to reach out to congratulate him, to tell him I was happy he was moving on, but my messages went unanswered. I found Rachel on social media, her profile was public, and sent her a message introducing myself. I told her I was David's mother and that I hoped we could meet soon. She never responded, but she must have told David, because the next day I received a formal cease and desist letter from a lawyer. It said that if I contacted David, his girlfriend, his friends, or his workplace again, he would pursue legal action. That I was to have no contact with him whatsoever. A cease and desist letter from my own son. I showed it to my friends at church, expecting sympathy, but they got quiet and uncomfortable. One of them, Patricia, who I'd known for 20 years, actually said, "Well, Michelle, you did throw away his deceased wife's belongings. That's pretty extreme." I was helping him, I said. Were you, or were you deciding what was best for him without asking what he actually needed? I stopped going to that church. David's sister stopped talking to me too. She said she couldn't be in the middle anymore, that what I'd done was beyond the pale, and that she understood why David wanted nothing to do with me. Even my ex-husband, who barely spoke to me under normal circumstances, called to tell me I'd crossed a line. Those were his wife's belongings, Michelle, his dead wife. You had no right. I was trying to help him heal. You were trying to control him like you always do, like you always have. And now you've lost your son because of it. He hung up before I could respond. But he was wrong. I haven't lost David. He's just going through a phase, an extended period of anger that he'll eventually move past. Once he's been with Rachel for a while, once he sees that moving on is possible, he'll realize I was right. He'll see that I forced him to take a step he wasn't capable of taking on his own. It's been over a year now, and I haven't spoken to David at all. I hear things through mutual acquaintances who are still willing to talk to me, though there are fewer of those every month. I heard he proposed to Rachel. They're engaged now, planning a wedding for next summer. I'm not invited. David's sister told me not to even think about showing up. He's made it very clear, she said. You're not part of his life anymore, you need to accept that. But how can I accept that? He's my son. I raised him. I changed his diapers, drove him to school, helped him with homework, paid for his college education. And now I'm supposed to just disappear from his life because I made one decision he didn't like. I drive past his apartment sometimes, even though I'm not supposed to. I see lights on, sometimes see him through the window. He looks happy. Healthier than he did when he was drowning in grief. See, my intervention worked. He's better now. He's moved on just like I knew he would. The fact that he's moved on without me in his life is unfortunate, but it's his choice. His mistake. I've started going to a new church. I don't tell people there about David. When they ask about my family, I just say I have a son who lives across town. I don't mention that we don't speak. I don't mention why. I've thought about reaching out to Rachel directly, explaining everything, helping her understand that I only ever wanted what was best for David. But the cease and desist letter makes that complicated. And besides, she's probably already been poisoned against me by David's version of events. Sometimes I imagine David's wedding. I imagine him standing at the altar with Rachel, starting a new chapter of his life. I imagine that I'm there, sitting in the front row where a mother should sit. I imagine that we've reconciled, that he's forgiven me, that he's introduced me to Rachel and we get along wonderfully. But that's just imagination. The reality is that I won't be at that wedding. I won't meet Rachel. I won't be part of David's new life. And whose fault is that? Not mine. I did what any mother would do. I saw my child suffering and I took action. I made a hard decision that he wasn't capable of making himself. If David wants to punish me for that by cutting me out of his life, that's his choice. A hurtful, vindictive choice, but his nonetheless. People keep telling me I should apologize. David's sister said that if I wrote him a sincere apology, acknowledged what I did wrong, maybe he'd consider talking to me again. But I don't have anything to apologize for. I can't apologize for something I don't believe was wrong. Yes, David was upset. Yes, he felt violated, but feelings aren't facts. The fact is that he was stuck in his grief and I unstuck him. The fact is that he's doing better now than he was before I intervened. The means may have been harsh, but the ends justified them. I sleep fine at night. I don't lie awake feeling guilty because I have nothing to feel guilty about. I made a decision based on what I thought was best for my son, and I stand by that decision. If David never speaks to me again, I'll survive. I raised him for 36 years. I gave him everything. If this is how he chooses to repay that, then I can't control it. Maybe someday he'll have children of his own. Maybe someday those children will grow up and make decisions that David doesn't agree with. Maybe then he'll understand what it's like to watch your child struggle and feel powerless to help. Maybe then he'll understand why I did what I did. Or maybe he won't. Either way, I know the truth. I was trying to help him. I was trying to save him from drowning in grief. I did what any mother would do. And if he can't see that, if he can't forgive that, then that's his failure, not mine. I stand by my decision. I always will.